It is the early 1600s. The air is thick with smoke from distant fires. Across Central Europe, towns and villages nestle in the valleys and forests. Life is quiet and the pace is slow. But, the shadows of war are everywhere. The 30 Years' War moves across the land like a dark cloud. This is not a modern world. Communication is slow. News travels by horse or on foot. Rumors of armies and battles reach each city long after the fighting has begun elsewhere. People live behind stone walls, trusting these barriers to keep them safe. The countryside is scarred. Crops are trampled. Livestock is stolen. Children play in narrow alleys while adults whisper about armies on the march. Church bells sometimes ring out warnings, not for prayer but for danger. The fear of war is always present. But nothing prepares a city for the true hardships that arrive when it is besieged. Siege warfare was a common tool in the 30 Years' War. Armies surrounded cities, hoping to force surrender without a costly attack. For those inside, life changed overnight. Soldiers closed the city gates. Nobody could leave or enter. The safe world inside the walls became a prison. For ordinary citizens, this brought dread and confusion. Shops shut their doors. The city felt smaller, cramped by the weight of danger outside. Streets emptied, except for guards and nervous messengers. The noise of battle was replaced by silence. Waiting became the hardest part. Families huddled together, listening for signs of hope or danger beyond the walls. Every day brought more uncertainty. Ordinary life, work, trade, school, stopped. People had to adjust quickly to a new and frightening routine. When a siege began, the first signs were simple but ominous. Markets closed, stalls that once overflowed with bread, meat and vegetables emptied quickly. But there was no time to mourn the loss of daily routines. Soon, refugees poured in from nearby villages, and they brought stories of burning farms and stolen cattle. Some carried nothing but the clothes on their backs. City dwellers took in relatives, friends, and strangers. Rooms became crowded. Beds and food were shared. The city's population swelled. More mouths to feed meant supplies ran out faster. The usual sounds of commerce faded, replaced by worried voices and crying children. At first, people tried to help each other, but the fear of hunger and disease grew with every new arrival. As weeks passed, the city's food stores shrank. Bread became thin and hard. Meat disappeared from most tables. People lined up for hours, hoping for scraps. The wealthiest families managed a little longer, but soon everyone felt the pinch. People adapted in small ways. They stretched flour with sawdust. Soup was made from roots and leaves. Sometimes rats and stray cats ended up in the cooking pot. Hunger made people creative and desperate. The young and the old suffered most. Children cried for food. The elderly grew weak. Disease followed hunger. As bodies lost their strength to fight, every meal became a question of survival. The days grew longer and hope faded with each empty bowl. Inside the besieged city, daily life changed. Work was scarce. Many spent their days waiting for news, for food, for the siege to end. Families tried to keep routines, even as the world outside the walls seemed to crumble. Diaries and letters from the time tell us about these struggles. One father wrote of rationing bread, breaking a single loaf into tiny pieces for his children. A mother described trading precious heirlooms for a sack of beans. Neighbors gathered in cellars, sharing stories and fears by candlelight. There were moments of kindness. People shared what little they had. Some opened their doors to strangers, but there were also hard choices. Should a family keep food for themselves or help a neighbor's hungry child? Every decision carried weight. Survival meant sacrifice and sometimes guilt. The weak and the vulnerable suffered most in silence. Children, the sick and the elderly were hit hardest by siege hardship. For them, hunger was not just an ache, but a threat to life itself. Mothers did what they could, boiling scraps into thin broth, while fathers searched every corner for something to eat. City records tell of orphaned children wandering the streets. Churches and charities tried to help, but their resources ran out. Disease spread quickly among the weakest. Typhus and dysentery claimed many lives. Funerals became quiet affairs with little ceremony. Shame often kept suffering hidden. Families withdrew when they could not provide. Some mothers left their sick children at church doors, hoping a stranger could do more. For the vulnerable, hope was fragile. Each day was a struggle to live and to keep faith. A siege is, a battle of minds as much as bodies. The waiting, the hunger, and the fear took a toll on everyone. Diaries speak of sleepless nights, haunted by the sound of enemy drums or distant cannon fire. Even in silence, the city was restless. Parents worried for their children's future. Young people lost hope for normal life. Some grew angry, blaming city leaders or neighbors for their plight. Others turned to prayer, seeking comfort in faith. Isolation was crushing. With gates closed, news from outside was rare. Rumors spread quickly. Every stranger was seen with suspicion. Trust was easily broken. Yet for some, hope remained. They wrote of dreams for peace and the promise of life returning to the city's streets. A siege tested the very heart of a city. At first, people pulled together, shared meals, caring for the sick, and nightly prayers helped many survive. Stories tell of neighbors who risked their own rations to help others. But not every community held strong. Scarcity bred suspicion. Some hoarded food, fights broke out over small scraps. Thieves crept through alleys at night looking for anything to steal. Still, acts of bravery and kindness shone through. City leaders sometimes opened stores of grain to the poorest. Priests organized communal meals. There were moments when the whole city sang together, voices rising above hunger and fear. Communities could fracture, but they could also endure. The bonds formed in hardship sometimes lasted long after the siege was over. When the siege lifted, survivors faced a changed world. Some families had lost everything. Others carried scars that could not be seen. The memory of hunger and fear lingered in every street and home. Yet the experience of siege left lessons that would echo through history. It showed the strength of ordinary people, their ability to adapt, to care for each other, and to survive the impossible. It showed, too, the cost of war on all who live in its shadow. Letters and diaries from besieged cities remind us, war's greatest pain often falls on those far from the battlefield. The courage to endure and the hope that survives in the darkest times are as much a part of history as any battle. In remembering the hardships inside besieged cities, we honor not only the struggles of the past, but also the enduring human spirit in times of crisis.